Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to this afternoon's first session on facilitating understanding challenges and opportunities for climate change education in a range of sectors. My name is Don Bosch, and I am with the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, and I will moderate this afternoon's panel discussion. I'm very pleased to have you with us, first of all, but also, as I understand, that there are even a larger number of sites across the country that are tuning in, both that were scheduled to see the presentations in this room remotely, but also quite a number of the attendants couldn't make it here because of the weather. So the conference has made web access, video access to them. So we welcome everyone to this afternoon's session. I am joined today by a distinguished panel, and first let me just start to my immediate left is Dr. Nancy Brickhouse. She's the Vice Provost of the University of Delaware and an expert in science education. I'll explain Nancy's and my relationship to what I'm going to introduce us to in a little bit. Mika Estrada is with the University of California, San Francisco, as a social scientist studying how understanding affects changes opinions and actions of people, who is involved in a project that she'll be talking about in the San Diego area. Frank Niepold is an important leader within the NOAA, within National Oceanic and Atmospheric Education, on climate change education. And I should also say that Frank is one of a small group of team leaders, interagency leaders, who are really promoting an interagency approach across our federal government for greater climate literacy. He's been a real champion of this issue of climate literacy in our school systems. And then finally, Tanya Mead is with the Delaware Department of Education. She is responsible in Delaware for implementation of something you'll be hearing a lot more about this afternoon, next generation science standards that a number of states in this country are in the process of adopting and implementing. Tanya, I should say, in addition to her responsibilities in Delaware, is also one of a small group of education experts throughout the states who are actually working together to advance the standards and the process on a national level. So we're very pleased to have this group with us today. I am here principally because I am the principal investigator of a program that we call Made Clear. I won't spell it all out, but it is on the back. If you got one of the things when you walked in, it shows you our overall organization. Made Clear is an effort sponsored by the National Science Foundation to develop and implement climate change education throughout our school systems and really throughout our educational sectors in the two states of Delaware and Maryland. It's a very bold and audacious program with big goals, and we're hoping to make a start in this project such to the point that it can be these things can be in place and self-sustaining. The Made Clear program deals with teaching. We help train teachers, both pre-service teachers in our universities as well as in-service school teachers. It brings in scientists throughout our states, the expertise that we have to help in that regard. And it also involves a very active program in learning science, research on the effectiveness and how education about climate can be how we've done and what are the lessons learned, so that we can basically take our experience and provide it to the rest of the nation, rest of the world. Also, we are interested and committed to moving this into public policy in our two states, so our educational policy. So the partners of this in this program involve not only our two universities, the University System of Maryland and the University of Delaware, but also, and most importantly, the two state departments of education in our states, and also in Maryland, the Maryland Public Television, which gives us another capacity for general education. It involves multiple sectors: higher education, K-12 sector, and informal education. And rather than trying to just impose yet another curriculum on our school systems, we reasoned that the only way this was going to be successful is to make climate literacy, climate change education a part of the educational reforms that were already going on. So we all know about Common Core that we're trying to do throughout the nation, but the next wave after that is the next generation science standards. So it has great opportunities for improving the scientific literacy, but also the climate literacy of our young people going forward. In addition, both of our states, adopted a little bit differently, have requirements of standards for environmental literacy. So it's another aspect that we can help empower. As I said, we're one of the 6 climate change educational partnerships funded by the NSF. Mika's one in the Climate Education Partnership Program in California is another. They're very diverse. You'll hear their program deals not with school kids, but with key influentials. Some of the other programs address the Arctic, the polar regions. Another program addresses urban environment. Another addresses the opportunity to educate people through aquaria around the country, ocean aquaria around the country, and the like. And another one deals with the Pacific Islands and the particular challenges and opportunities to help those people who live in a vulnerable area understand what's happening to our world. I should also point out, if you're in the audience, we have Pat Horcourt, who's over here. Raise your hand, Pat. And Jen Merrill, who are our co-project managers. And they'll be, as we present things, handing out cards if you have questions. And also afterwards, if you want any particular follow-up, please talk to one of these women to help help make sure we get your name and contact information. So why did I, a science guy involved in my whole career in advanced research and graduate education, get involved in this? It's because I've participated in a number now of committees, activities, including the two first national climate assessments, the National Academy's America's Climate Choices project, and produced voluminous reports providing the science that we need to empower and inform policy, and in most cases they landed with thuds. And after the America's Climate Choices, with that effort, I realized this was really a long-term challenge that we had, and that I owed it as a scientist to help try to bring my understanding to bear to our educational systems, because basically this isn't about a policy decision or choices that we'll make in the next year or 5 years. It's forever. And so the young people that we train have to be more literate about science, number one, but also better understand the way the world works so they can make informed decisions, choices down the road. So that was my motivation. Education is critical. This morning, if you were here, you heard very little about education. I think there was one individual who talked about how interactive models and tools have been used and how that's to advantage. And that's actually fairly typical in terms of the general discussions you hear about science and climate change policy. But I think for the reasons that I just mentioned, it's an absolutely essential part of the equation. So, as I said, we should be thinking about not only the kinds of information and understanding to help people make societal choices in the near term, but also preparing our young people, the citizens of the future, to be better able to make personal choices as well as collective choices in our society. I'm very pleased, having said that just in December of last year, the White House announced an initiative as part of its overall climate action policy plan, I should say. And it's entitled Lifting America's Game in Climate Education, Literacy, and Training. It's an attempt to bring education into this mix of approaches that we're doing in our government and our society. And I hope Frank Nepal can tell us a bit more about that. It's a great opportunity for us all to bring this element into our work. So scientists must play a critical role in this educational movement. We have lots of understanding. We found that our educational system, training of teachers, the way we structure our science education is not really now well equipped to handle this challenge. And so it's a very difficult one. So science, I think scientists play a very important role in bringing that to bear. We have challenges ahead, but great opportunities. This next generation science standards moving forth throughout the country, maybe slower than originally thought, but that's the nature of the challenge. And there are pushbacks. If you might have heard in the news recently, West Virginia, the state school board basically wanted climate change removed from the next generation science standards objective. Very importantly, the teachers in West Virginia stood up and basically turned that back. So these are the kinds of things we have moving forward. In my view, there's little more important that I can do as a scientist and an educator than to help our young people in this country become better stewards of the planet in which they live by understanding how it works. So I don't think we talked about the order. Maybe we should just go down in the order in which we're seated. Nancy Brickhouse is one of my co-investigators in our Made Clear Maryland Delaware project. Nancy?
Thank you. So I'm going to say a few words more about the Made Clear project that we're working on in Maryland and Delaware, with particular emphasis in terms of what we're doing at the university level. I think that one of the things that's really unique about this particular project is its incredible ambition to work across the entire Maryland-Delaware region at multiple institutions, both informal and in the formal educational system. Ours is the only grant funded by the National Science Foundation that works with K-12 schools. And so, and we see that as an important vehicle, really, for getting the message out. We've worked a lot with universities across the two states, working with faculty and supporting them in the development of new courses that are related to climate change, faculty in a variety of different disciplines. But we focus particularly on teacher education faculty because of the kind of impact that they have, not only directly with the students in front of them, but the students that their students will teach throughout the region. So we're focusing a great deal of attention on teacher education. I think that we're also at an interesting time in a lot of universities right now where there's a lot of questioning going on about the nature of the work that we do and the nature of the research that we do, as well as the nature of the teaching that we do, to make it more real-world relevant and to really take on what we call grand challenges. At Delaware, we have a new strategic planning process underway, focusing on grand challenges, and certainly climate change is oftentimes identified as one of those very important issues that simply must be addressed and can only be addressed through education. Technology alone will not solve this problem. It's a deeply human problem, and it is an educational problem. We're in the process as well of redesigning our undergraduate curriculum, developing core courses where grand challenges are a theme of the core courses, and computational reasoning, which is part of the K-12 science standards and is absolutely essential to understanding the kind of scientific models that are developed in climate science. Those models require a kind of computational reasoning that is not typically taught in either K-12 schools or in universities. So we're looking carefully at our curriculum in that regard. Don mentioned that we see the next generation science standards as kind of the mechanism by which climate change will be infused in the K-12 schools throughout the two states. We think that this is really important because that's the way change happens, is by partnering with state institutions, state departments of education. And the next generation science standards are a very major shift in terms of the kind of science that will be taught in schools as these are implemented. Currently, in the state of Delaware, and Tanya, you can correct me if I get this wrong, but the state standards really require you to kind of know the difference between climate and weather, and that's about it. It really goes very little past kind of a definitional understanding. The next generation science standards really will require a very, very significant change in the way that science is taught, and climate science in particular, throughout K-12 schools. It's a challenge, but it's an important one. Certainly one of the things that we learned from No Child Left Behind is that it's not enough to have standards and assessments. If all you have is standards and assessments, what you do is you have mass failure. You've got to build an infrastructure of curriculum, professional development, and research, so that you're actually creating capacity in schools to deliver a richer scientific and educational curriculum. So a lot of what we're doing right now is we're trying to we're trying to build the capacity to deliver those professional development systems around climate change. We've already begun that process. We're also vetting curriculum, we're developing assessments, and we're doing research so that we're learning from the implementation of the new curriculum and the new standards. We're developing what we call learning progressions, which is kind of lingo in the educational research community. But the idea around learning progressions is that it puts the learning first, where teachers study carefully the meaning that students are making of the science that's being taught, and developing ways of responding to students' understandings and pushing them further so that they develop increasingly rich understandings of climate change. So we're working on developing those learning progressions and developing those kinds of assessments so that teachers can track student learning over time and enable students to develop increasingly rich understandings of climate change. We're also doing this in a part of the country that is rich in terms of sociocultural diversity, and we're working to try to understand the ways in which that diversity matters and how students make sense of climate science. Certainly we know that this is an area of the curriculum that's not just about information processing. It's deeply about cultural beliefs. It's about what communities kids belong to. It's about who they listen to, not only in school but outside of school. So those are factors that all have to play a role in how we go about doing this work. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're actually in the process of building these kinds of materials so that when next generation science standards are implemented in our states, that we stand ready as partners to enable a strong and faithful implementation of the new climate change education.
Thanks very much, Nancy. I was struck when she said, now maybe best we can do is teach the difference between weather and climate. For some of those guys, people in the house across the river, that would be a good start. Mika Estrada.
Hello. Thank you for having me here. I just want to ask a question. How many of you actually are doing climate change education? All right, a lot. Okay. And how many of you work with leaders in some way from your community? Okay. Just wanted to get an orientation of who the audience is, because
we're preaching to the choir here.
All right. So you've already heard that the project that I'm co-PI on and I'm directing right now is Climate Education Partners, and it's located in San Diego, and we're doing education for key influentials. So these are leaders in our community that are, we've picked 6 sectors that we're focusing on. So I'm going to talk a little bit rapidly. If you miss anything, we have a website, I have things here I can give you, but there's a lot of information, so I'm going to kind of go fast on this. So the 6 sectors that we're focusing on are business, elected officials, health sector, the utilities, tribal community, and the Latino community. So we're doing education reaches out into leadership in all of those areas right now. Our project is funded by the National Science Foundation. We had a 2-year planning grant, and we're now in 2.5 years into the implementation grant. So what we have done is we've developed a model of education that really blends together communication specialists, social psychology, which is kind of having to do with social influence, how we influence people, and also science, the science of climate change. And we have people from all 3 of those communities working together integratively to develop the education practices. I'm the behavioral scientist. I'm the social psychologist. So I'm always learning about climate science. I'm not an expert in it. But we bring all of these blended together into the education that we're doing. What we know is that our community is beautiful, it's thriving, it's a really lovely place to be, and that we live in a rich environment in San Diego. What we also know is that climate change threatens that community. And we focus on 6 impact areas that we might be impacted by the temperature rises, sea level rise, wildfires, which we're getting pretty regularly now, how it's going to impact health issues, and how it threatens the nature's benefits, such as our animals and our wildlife. So we've picked these 6 impact areas to really focus on and to do education in each one of those. But one of the key things with key influentials and with people who are leaders, they don't have a lot of time necessarily to go into depth in this. So one of our kind of high-level goals for the project is just for our leaders to be able to say those 6 things. Can you tell me what those impacts are? I just said them. What do you remember from what I just said? Yeah.
Temperature, sea level, wildlife, health.
Good job. Oh my gosh. And nature's benefits. Wildfires, right. That's right. So we hope that if our leaders in San Diego can go into meetings and be able to say, well, we should consider this because the sea level's right. If they can get those 6 things, we actually think that that's a pretty big success to have. If they get more depth in it, that's great, and we're going to give them all the information they need to get depth. But at the highest level, we'd like our leaders to know that those impact areas are prevalent and coming our way. Interestingly, we've done polling in our area, and 84% of San Diegans, which is a very conservative area, do believe that climate change is happening. So despite the fact that it's a conservative area, there's a lot of the population knows that it's happening, and we help our leaders to know that the population knows. So we try to educate them about that as well. So in terms of going forward, what the Climate Education Partners does is we're working with the community of leaders in San Diego who are concerned about this issue to provide them knowledge and to help them to make informed decisions as they go forward. So what I've just told you right now is kind of our triangle. Everything that we do has those things in it. San Diego's really great. Climate change can threaten us, and what we're doing, we can make a difference to address those issues. Very simple. Messaging always has those 3 things. And so that's one level, is the communication level of our education. On a second level, there is the social science of it. We are guided by a theory which is called the Educational Tripartite Integration Model of Social Influence. You don't need to know it. It's what my career is built on, but you guys don't need to know what it is. And basically what this model is about is how people integrate into community. And what happens when you're a part of a community? Well, when you're a part of a community, think of one that you really value, that's important to you. 1, you can do what that community wants you to do. 2, you identify with them. You feel like you belong in that group. And then 3, the values of that group are your values. So if you think of a community like a religious community or maybe a political community that you're involved in, you can do what the group wants you to do, you feel you belong there, and when you're really integrated into that community, their values are your values. So I study how people become part of community. And so one of the things we want to do is help build a community in San Diego of people who are concerned about climate change, leaders who are concerned about climate change, that you're not by yourself. And we found that this was a really critical thing to do. When we did interviews with 100 leaders in San Diego, one of the things we found was if we asked them, are you concerned about climate change? 90% of them would say, yes, I have concern about it. Again, very conservative area. You know, it's not a place where you would think people would actually even endorse it. But they say, I have concern that it might impact us. If you ask them, how much do you think the people around you, the other leaders in San Diego, are concerned about it? They said 90% aren't very concerned. So while we found that 90%, when you ask them, are concerned, they believe nobody else is like they are. So there's this huge disproportion between what people are saying in private and what they think other people believe. So if you're in a community where you think nobody else cares about it, you're not going to say too much about it. So one of the key things that we want to do is build community and let people know you're not the only one. Other people care about it. Other people are concerned about this, and we can move forward in that way. The other thing that happens when you're a part of a community is that you're more likely to engage in the normative behaviors of that community. You're going to do what that community does. So in building community, we also give them kind of more, social support to engage in the behaviors that help us to promote and to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. How am I doing on time?
You've got about 2-3 minutes.
Okay, so there's a lot of people that we're partnering with. There's 4 universities, which I'm not going to list them all off. We're working with the San Diego Foundation. We're working with the Communication Specialist Group to try and get the message out. And one of the key things that we have done in order to do what I've just described is to put together this report. It's actually more like a handbook. And I brought copies down here. You can download it on the website. It says San Diego 2050 is calling how will we answer? And what you can see, maybe if you get closer, is that the cover of this is covered with leaders in San Diego. Some of them Republicans, some of them Democrats, some of them from small communities, some of them city leaders, different backgrounds. But one of the things we wanted to promote was that you're not alone. There's actually people who care about this. And in this pamphlet here, there's different levels of information. First, the science is really good. The science comes from Scripps Institute of Oceanography. We worked with a lot of scientists to summarize the 6 impact areas that I described earlier, and to give really nice infographics that are very simple to understand, but then also give them depth. So there's both of those components in there. So the science is good, it's rigorous, and it's different levels. It can be digestible in these little pictures, or you can look at it in more depth if you want to read in. The second thing that's in here is we have examples of leaders who are doing something about that particular thing. So we have leaders who are working on dealing with the fires. We have leaders who are working with health issues. So we highlight the good things that are happening. Why? You want to shift norms, right? You want to shift the perception of norms. And so by giving them examples of how other leaders are doing things already, this helps to give the perception that we do things here in San Diego. And then the last thing we do is we focus on that issue. Remember, I talked about efficacy, that I can do something. So we give them examples of things that an individual can do and things to consider when making decisions. So key thing about this is that this is really focused on leaders to help guide leaders in making decisions. It's also on another level shifting perceptions of what the community is like, who cares about climate change, and it also gives them concrete things that they can do. And everything that we're doing in addition to this has the same components. We've just developed a video, educational video, that has all these components in it. We're developing tours. We've been doing lots and lots of presentations. All of them have these components of being able to have good science, having the impact areas focused upon, and giving people examples of what we're doing already that's great. So it's a very positive, focused approach to education. And on our website, you can go in and you can get the actual articles that have been published. So if you're really into the science is there. It's solid. But as I said, there's different layers of it depending upon what the leader wants in terms of digestibility. And then in the very end, we always tie it back to values, right? The value for the next generation, that we're doing this because we care, because there's something that really matters to us. That's just as important, right? You have to ground it in what really matters with people. And that's in the 2050 report, and it's in everything that we do as well. So I've talked really fast to try and get it all in there. I will say that the biggest challenge, one of the questions was what are the challenges? One of the biggest challenges that we have is this is a really integrative approach. I mean, it has communications, it has science, it has having all those people work together, very challenging. But I also think that's where the innovation comes from, that I don't think this problem is going to be solved by any one of those groups by itself. You've got to have this collaboration between these different levels of people who are on the ground, working with people who are doing the research. I mean, it's difficult, it's hard, and it is the source of our innovation for solving this issue. So thanks
very much, Mika. You know, this morning, one of the panelists this morning commented that on this issue of wanting to know other members of your community think and do, commented that one of the things that they found people are most interested in is the energy consumption of your neighbors. Yeah. You know, as a motivating force. Yeah, that is. Yeah, so that's great.
No, the research I do in my lab informed
I was struck also by thinking my neighbors probably figure that out because I don't have a lot of lights on the yard and it looks dark. So I'm not sure they motivated by my behavior.
I'm just going to say, as part of our grant, so our research is what started the O-Power stuff. Like they used our research for that.
That's right.
And as part of this grant, one of the things we did is we put little contractions, I guess, in people's houses. They give feedback on their energy use and also told them what their neighbor's energy use was at that time. And we've just completed a study showing that when you tell somebody how much money it costs for them to use that energy, or you just tell them how much energy they're using, or you tell them what their neighbors are using. The neighbors, that's what reduces energy use.
Huh.
So
that's interesting.
That's
Frank,
cutting edge. It's coming out next year.
Frank Nepo.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, it's been a long couple days. This is an incredibly interesting panel to be upon. And one of the things that makes it interesting in the sequence of events is, so I started at NOAA coming from NASA in 2005. I was brought in to lead the charge for climate literacy for the nation. And when I started, it was me. And this isn't about me. That's exactly my point. When we started in 2005, the swell of the community beyond just a small program in NOAA grew incredibly fast. One of the biggest movers in that space was in 2008, well, a little bit in 2007, the federal grants started coming from Congress for NASA, NOAA, NSF, and the tune of over from 2008 to 2000 until now, basically, is something in the order of $120 million of federal investments. And really what those investments are is all about innovation. There have been very, large, small, medium innovation efforts. The two projects we're talking about here are the next level of innovation, where they had planning and then they had large-scale deployment. But even then, it's still at the innovation level, because what made clear and what the Climate Education Partnership, did I get that right?
Yeah, good job.
I'm getting there. What those projects are really doing is showing potential just at the R&D and the next D. What we really are looking at the nation is the next level out, so that made clear is across all the states, that approach. If whatever works, it is transfers. Same thing with the CEP project. Same thing with other projects that we're talking about, and other projects that aren't even talked about yet. So those projects, and then on top of that, there was a large groundswell that came out of the non-federal funding space. So projects like the Alliance for Climate Education, completely non-federally funded, very strong partnerships with a lot of the federal and non-federal science education community and science community. But these kind of initiatives have been moving in a lot of different levels. And I think the biggest, kind of driver that I can put any feel on was when we defined, climate literacy back in 2007 and then redid it in 2008. And then we came up quickly after that with energy literacy and a lot of these framing initiatives that let the community figure out what did they want to do and how could they find other partners to work on similar projects. The synergy and collaboration in climate education has been immense. Compared to when I was at NASA working on remote sensing education, it was highly combative, not collaborative. Everybody just would do their own thing. Nobody would talk to each other. They all wanted to do with their own thing. And in this field is like no other field I've been in, because if you heard the talks this morning about what we have before us in dealing with these issues, these are highly relevant, highly consequential, and they are urgent. Those generate a prime to the pump that is unlike anything else. And so when you talk and you hear what Don said about why a climate researcher and an academic and a teacher would choose to put time and energy into this part of the equation, you're hearing something that is incredibly heartening for somebody who works on the side of it, to have somebody. I work in the science agencies for years, and it doesn't always happen. You've heard it many times. I think Jean McCarthy has said it sometimes beautifully about how important education is, but she didn't choose to do that today. Governor Richards, I've heard him say certain things like this, but not today. And this is a consistent issue that is going to provide very important contributions to how this country and beyond address this issue. This is a multi-decadal issue, and it is an urgent issue at the same time. So I think that that there's a lot of really smart work that has been done in this space, but I think the biggest issue before us is what we have before us. Where are we going now? Because the scale of the systems that we can bring online through education are immense. There are 140,000 school buildings in the nation, 3 million teachers of science, all the other educators that have something to do with climate and energy topics is immense. The librarian in every school building is the one who cares about information literacy more than anybody else, and that is critical to the citizen skills that we're talking about. If you can't figure out where to get credible information on this topic, it's not going to come from a science teacher like I used to be. It's going to come from the librarian or the English teacher. This is an all hands on deck, all teachers on deck strategy, not just a science teachers, not just a the science department at a university. So the next generation science standards are brilliant in their design. We were part of the community that helped design that through the National Research Council. We were part of the community that helped the NGSS be what it is. But we're also part of the community that's going to help it be implemented in supporting states like Delaware and Maryland to the best of our ability. We wish we had more ability, to be honest with you. Well, we're going to do the best we can. But those are very large-scale, systemic, very important initiatives that are going to yield near, mid, and long-term advances. But that's just in the formal side. Universities are doing amazing work. The American President's Climate Commitment is done. I think I got that right. Did I get that right?
Close.
Close. Yeah. Colleges and universities' climate commitment. Yeah. Are doing amazing works. If you listen to what's going on, and I don't know if we have any students who are undergraduate or graduate students in the room, but what I'm hearing from undergraduate and graduate students in the room is really innovative, motivated work in their universities to carve out disciplines, carve out minors, majors, coursework that doesn't exist, and put together very relevant focus for their work, because they're going to be talking about jobs. And if you heard what Gina McCarthy and what the President said in the State of the Union, we're talking about the jobs of the future here. These are the jobs. I mean, we're going to rebuild the middle class through these jobs. That's what the President said. That's what Gina McCarthy said today. Well, that means that the students that are in the schools now are going to be looking at that. I had a 7th grader about 4 years ago ask me in a climate talk, I think I understand what you're talking about with climate change. A lot of IPCC stuff, National Climate Assessment, the normal stuff. He said, I get that, but my question to you is, are all the jobs going to change? A 7th grader, a young man, is thinking about what he's going to spend his life and career doing. I remember at that age I wanted to be an architect. I'm not an architect, but I was thinking about being one. But my point to you is that the educating the students, they're thinking longer than the next assessment, the next class, and they're the ones that we're going to be needing to continue the work that we started and get moving. So I think that the value of what we do here is immense, way more than I think a lot of our leaders understand. And it's been part of my job to help them understand how immense it is. One of the things we were able to do was to work with the administration to put forward the Climate Education and Literacy Initiative. And it's really about citizenry and workforce. That's really what that's about. How do we bring the education enterprise online to fulfill what we're going to be promising in the President's work and the international work through COP21? We have an Article 6 agreement. We've had it since 1990 that we were going to educate our nation on climate change. Now we're getting serious about it. And we're going to be reporting on that every year, every 4 years. I'm the guy who writes the report. And we are making progress in this country toward that end. We have a lot more to do, but I think that's exciting stuff. Another thing that I wanted to emphasize here was that the science enterprise has a tremendous amount to bring to bear. I sit in the nexus of the Climate and Global Change Enterprise at the U.S. Global Change Research Program. That's a $2.6 billion annual investment. A lot of the leaders are at this meeting. They're not in this room, but they're here. That is a huge enterprise, and that's just the federal investments. The non-federal, the universities that receive a lot of the grant money that we give out are also part of that partnership. But I think the states like Delaware and Maryland and Kentucky and Kansas and Rhode Island and California and the list goes on, and Wyoming is reconsidering their position. I think other states like New York and others will come online in this space in time. We're going to do it organically as opposed to top-down. I think that's a smart way to go. But they're going to need, as was said, the lift for the teachers is immense in this space. As somebody who's worked in climate and global change and Earth systems for 20 years, it is not a simple process for a chemistry, physics, biology, earth science teacher to come up to speed on this. It's slow, it's tricky, it's hard, but it's so worth it. And how we help them with our enterprises, with the people who've broken the work in the research enterprise to help inspire them and support them and give them the help to really understand how this comes to pass is I think, a critical contribution. How we make that happen, I don't think we've got that worked out at all, but that's part of what we're trying to do here. It's an immense partnership, and I think that the climate and global change enterprise and the education enterprise, it's kind of just imagine the Reese's peanut butter cup thing back when I was a kid, and a guy walking along the street, and he's got the chocolate bar, and he bounces in and trips and puts his candy bar in the peanut butter. I don't know how that happens, but that's the kind of analogy I think about a lot when I go into these meetings. Sorry, that was supposed to be a joke. It didn't really work.
I didn't think you were that old, Frank. I remember that.
Oh, I am. My kids are talking about how old I am. Anyway, but I think the one last thing I'll say that I really liked about this last question that was framing our time together was expansion. I think scaling and expansion, if you were here for the Education Summit yesterday, one of the big things that was said in the morning was we have a scale problem. We really do. We have a huge scale problem. And I think that at the beginning of my remarks, I was talking about the scale of the enterprise. The scale, just another fact to remember is 1 in 4 people in the United States is a student. 1 in 4. 1 in 4 people in the United States is a student. There are 76 million people in K-12 and university graduate, 76.4 million, 1 in 4. And something in the order of almost 1 billion people go to informal science institutions, place-based facilities a year in this country. And, as John Jarvis said at the roundtable that Don and I were at, there's no better place to learn about climate change's impacts right now than the national park. He's true. They're doing amazing work there, but, they get in somewhere in the order of 300 million visitors a year. That's almost the entire population of the United States annually. So they're doing amazing work. So I don't want to discount the informal contribution here. It's immense as well. So, but how we expand into coherent understanding and partnership. And the last thing I'll say is I think one of the most revealing, exciting places is looking at a community level. How do these modalities of education come together in meaningful, coherent ways at a community scale? I think is an untapped potential that we've been thinking about, but I don't think we've really done it yet, and that may be the new horizon for where we go to scale. But it's not at national, but it's for the nation, but at a community-by-community basis. So I'll stop there.
As Frank passes the baton to Tanya Mead, we're handing out cards are available. Start formulating your question. Pat and Jen have cards, so you can, when we get to the discussion period.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've been an educator for 30 years now, and when I started out in education, started out high school, went to middle school, went to elementary school, went back to middle school, we didn't have standards. So basically, you taught whatever you liked. So at the elementary level, science basically was dinosaurs and butterflies. And when you went through kindergarten through 5th grade, if you gave a test on butterflies and dinosaurs, everybody could pass that test or assessment. So back in '95, the standards came out. So they decided what was going to be at kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. So we had those standards for a very long time, and they worked well. They said what we needed by the time students needed by the time they graduated, 12th grade year. Well, was it 2000? I can't remember now. Time flies so quickly. 2012, 2013, these next generation science standards came out that I helped write draft. I didn't write. I was working on the drafts with the writers, taking them back to Delaware, having my teachers look at them, making corrections, ideas, sending them back to the writers. Lots of things have changed in science. Climate change wasn't around 30 years ago. It wasn't around in 1995. Think about your phone devices. Think about computers. Think about lots of things, the medical field. So lots of things have changed. So these new standards, they are science standards for all students. They are not climate change standards. However, in those science standards are topics on weather and climate. And in weather and climate, you talk about climate change. And you start talking about weather and climate all the way down in kindergarten. So you start setting the stage. I think it's very important, too, that as we teach science or science and climate change in a science classroom, we don't get into the politics of climate change. We, as scientists, science teachers, talk about the science. We show them the data. We don't tell them about the data. They need to figure it out for themselves. They need to be the critical thinkers. They are going to be the consumers. They need to figure it out for themselves. What's going on? They need to be analyzing. And that's what Made Clear is doing. They're showing them the data. They're helping with the professional development. Teachers don't have that background. Think about some of you, back in your high school days, the teacher's probably lecturing, giving you a book to read, and you're filling out a worksheet. Those days are gone. Everybody has a cell phone. You can look up all that vocabulary. That isn't today's world. Analyzing, critical thinking skills, 21st century skills, that's what college and career readiness is. That's what the job market's looking for. And that's what we need to get our students looking and analyzing and being good consumers. And that's where we're going with these next generation science standards. And what great tool is to use that climate change stuff, to look at it and figure it all out. Delaware adopted the standards in 2013. And we have an implementation plan. It's a 3 to 4 year plan. My boss wanted it to be done in 1 year. Training teachers, it's not like put it in a microwave and be done. It's a crock pot method. It's got to cook for a long time because it's about how to teach. It's a real big shift. It's not standing deliver anymore. We have 95 teachers right now. We have a next-gen teacher leadership program. We meet with them every month for 2.5 hours. They had a leadership program in the summer. We will have a lead teacher in every building in the state of Delaware at elementary, middle school, and high school. So we're building up sustainability, collaboration, working together. It's teacher up, leading. I meet with every single curriculum director. We have 19 school districts. We are a small state, 23 charter schools. We work together on trying to solve these problems. We work on professional development, curricular materials, infrastructure, communications. I'm missing something. Assessment. It's ongoing. It's hard work. It's hard being a teacher. You have all these barriers. You have Common Core. Actually, Common Core is a really good plus for science because now you have to argue and defend. Again, teacher just fed the information to the students. The student took it in. Now, again, you're analyzing and you have to defend based on your claims. Communication is key. We're working with principals. We have principals academies. Most principals, I'm sorry if you're a principal out there, don't have a science background. So they usually say, you know what, we can have an assembly during science time. Skip science, do more reading and more math because we need to pass the Smarter Balance or the PARC test that's coming up. So that's a great barrier for science teachers trying to get science in. And I'm probably out of time.
You have a couple of minutes. I'll give you a couple of minutes if you would need it.
Time and money are always a problem. We are very lucky because in Delaware we have some great business partners, so they are providing some money and some grants for us to get these teachers together. All teachers in Delaware go through professional development in order to get resource materials. We have a statewide recommended curriculum. That's a plus and can be a negative because we have existing curriculum material that is not next gen aligned. So now we're working with these teachers on examining the existing materials and how are we going to change these materials. We've already invested millions of dollars into all these materials, which are in a big warehouse like Lowe's, and we deliver all these materials to every single school district 4 times a year. So if you're a teacher, we deliver it right to your front door. We gather it up one marking period and deliver another set of materials to you the next marking period. So that is one of the big challenges of making those changes. Again, having a partnership with Made Clear, they can provide some of the PD and they can provide some of those materials to help support some of these efforts in making these changes. So I think we are very lucky to be in a small state and a partnering state with Maryland that we can have this partnership. And in order to pull off the next generation science standards, we have to have partnerships in order to make sure our students are going to be science literate and climate literate. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Well, that's an interesting observations Tanya made, and we chose this regional project, Maryland and Delaware, because we shared a common environment. You know, we're joined together by the Mason-Dixon line, actually, that runs between our states, and we have many regional climate similarities, and actually certain level of socio-cultural economic relationships, but there are some important differences, not only on the cultural basis, but importantly on the organizational basis. So as Tanya pointed out, in Delaware, it's a much more centralized system. They provide these materials in plans to the whole state. In Maryland, we're more decentralized. We have a county bigger than Maryland, you know, so bigger than Delaware. So it's a bigger challenge that we have. But we're all through all of our projects. Since we're funded by the Science Foundation, it's just not about making some progress on this. It's learning from it. So we're all going to be obliged to study the differences, see what we can learn from it, and what it tells us for extending the results. So my colleagues gave me some start-off questions here, but actually the questions you've submitted are better than my start-off questions and more interesting, so I'll go right to them. And this first question deals specifically with K-12, but since I work on environmental sustainability at a university system perspective, I can tell you is equally pertinent and appropriate to higher education. And that is, there seems to be a disconnect between this movement of green schools in the K-12 sector and energy and climate literacy. So we're all trying to do this, but are we missing opportunities to basically promote learning by as we green our buildings, green our practices, as we do that? And particularly this questioner asked for aging urban infrastructure, where we're trying to come in and retrofit things and improve the quality of life of people who don't get to appreciate nature. Are there opportunities for integrating this practices in our schools, universities as well, with the education? Anyone?
I'm actually the Green Ribbon School Coordinator for the state of Delaware, and we are trying. I'm working with the EPA, the Green Building Business Association, Delaware Department of Natural Resources. We are trying to get schools to move in that direction. We're trying to give awards, Energy Star. We're moving in that direction. The one thing that's different in Delaware is that we have referendums in order to build new schools. And so when you're trying to build a greener school, the taxpayers want the cheapest school. So trying to go greener and putting the money out front doesn't always work. So we try to do there's 3 pillars in the Green Ribbon School program. We really try to work on health, and we try to work on the environment, and we do things with existing buildings and try to make them more energy efficient, but actually trying to get a new building and making it, they do make it green, but it could be a lot greener. It's a lot different in Maryland. Maryland, you have a much stronger, greener school program. Anybody else wants to
Just one other piece that I think is really quite interesting that's going on that relates to this, but there is a split. What happens in the classrooms and what happens at the infrastructure is there are huge missed opportunities all over the place. A case example, my kid's school, it's a Quaker school. They just put in 4.3 acres of solar field, saved the school $80,000 a year. They're putting in another 5.2. There'll be 70% renewable generated locally within a couple months. But the kids completely disengaged from that process. Huge missed opportunity for jobs, career training, and connecting them to the urgency of the issue. How we as we move into this space where we look at the energy systems, the other thing in next generation science centers that I think a lot of people miss is the cross-cutting concepts are incredibly rich beyond the disciplinary core ideas where a lot of people focus, and a lot of the stuff where that missed opportunity is actually in those cross-cutting concepts. Kids want to dig this stuff up and take it apart and understand it, and it's happening on the roof in the field next to the school, and they're not invited to join that process. I think that's a huge missed opportunity for a lot of program improvement. And a lot of schools are saving a lot of money putting in solar panels and other things, but the kids aren't necessarily involved. And one last other piece of this I think that's important is that the school is also a place for emergency shelters. A lot of communities rely on the local school as a place for shelter in place. And the move to make the school the cheapest building actually makes it not as secure as it could be for the shelter in space. As we go into a more extreme climate and continue to go into a more extreme climate, that's another driver on why school buildings should be much more carefully and thoughtfully designed beyond the cheapest building, because there's a lot of other value there.
I was going to add that this issue actually even goes up into our communities because there's a lot of businesses and cities that are doing incredible things and nobody knows they're doing it. And their employees don't know that they're doing it, and the people that are working in the buildings don't know exactly what's happening. And we've been doing a series of lunch and learns, working with the leadership of businesses and giving them opportunities to talk about what they're doing infrastructure for their organization and how that ties into the 5 impact areas. So I'm not going to give specific examples, but you have the same gap even at the businesses and city levels. And again, great opportunities to tie in and to change perceptions of what's normative and what we're doing as a community.
I'll just add one other bit to this, and that is the universities across the country are really examining a lot more what they're doing outside of classroom as well as what goes on in classrooms. With technology and the kind of challenges that higher education faces, I think we have to make a case for a residential campus. And one of the things that our students are bringing to the table to the administration is that they want much stronger programs around sustainability, and they're stepping up to the plate to actually lead those efforts. So it's a great opportunity for the university to get its house in order, but it's also a great educational opportunity for our students as they not only learn how to do this work, but also learn important leadership qualities as well. So that's actually going on right now as part of our strategic planning.
So hold the microphone, because the next question is a perfect follow-up on your comment, Associate Provost. And the question is, colleges and universities are focusing on energy and climate literacy in the sciences, social sciences, economic, and technical domains. Why are teacher training programs limiting energy and science literacy only to science teachers? Wouldn't be integrating energy and climate literacy in all its social, economic, and environmental aspects be a better strategy for a broader impact?
I absolutely agree. And that is going on in some places as well. There's a lot of environmental studies. What we call it at the University of Delaware is really environmental studies, and it literally does cut across all of the disciplines. One of the challenges, though, that universities face, and it's the same problem that we then imposed on K-12 systems, is we created these things called disciplines. So, the world has problems and universities have disciplines. And it does get in the way.
Some universities lack discipline, but that's enough.
But it does get in our way sometimes of actually dealing with real-world problems. But, you know, I couldn't agree more that the education that needs to go on across the universities, and particularly in teacher education programs, is really not discipline-specific at all. It cuts across.
Great. So, Mika, you are very popular by the audience. I've got 4 questions, and I'll see if I'll get through a couple of them, and I'll give you the rest. So, as a social science, Mika, what is the significance of the millennial generation in climate change education, both from the perspective of learners as well as educators?
Okay, this goes. There's definitely interesting research that's been going on about this next generation. It's not my area of expertise, but I can comment slightly on it. They say that this is the most narcissistic generation. When you do personality scale testing and stuff, that you get very high marks on that. And what that looks like is that this upcoming generation, is less likely to persist in jobs that they're not happy with, and persist in situations that they don't find pleasing to themselves. And so there is that element. Another element is the impact of 9/11. For this upcoming generation, that's one of the major images they have, or biggest image they have as they're growing up, and we don't know exactly how that has impacted this generation, but it seems to have been a turning point for people who remember it and those who don't remember it. So other than that, I don't have a really great answer for that.
So
that's not my study.
the question is, are you familiar with the study of motivated avoidance that shows people who are motivated to avoid hearing doom and gloom scenarios? Let me finish the question.
Yep.
And are you motivated to take action when presented with the positive solutions? Also, related questions is that, well, what strategies then are you using to develop a more supportive community to help those people come to terms with this?
Yeah, so our intuition is that if we tell people what's bad going to happen, that's going to influence them more likely to do something. And the science on social influence says actually that's usually not true. And if you give people a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of times people close down and they actually are less likely to act. So what we find is more effective is telling people the positive, reminding them what other people are doing, what they can do. What the positive opens up people to move in a way that the negative does not. And interestingly, if you ask people what they think is more effective, the negative or the positive, typically people will think the negative is what motivates people more often. But they find there's a lot of research in medicine, like having people do mammograms, all of that research over and over again. If you tell people how many don't do mammograms, that's less effective than saying the number of people who do. So the positive, what are we doing? Who's doing it? How many are doing it? That is a much more effective method of forming change than telling people what they're doing wrong. And it's not intuitive, and if you ask people in general, they will think that it's the negative. But if you look at experiments where you actually test this over and over again, you find the positive is what's most likely to result in behavioral change, even when people are unaware of it.
Frank?
There's a really interesting part of the problem with that is that, so I sit in a federal science agency. I'm part of 18 federal agencies working on this, and the vast majority of our enterprise is on problem identification, not on the solution identification. In fact, that's not part of our mission. And so a lot of our expertise, it's a disciplinary problem. And yet the arc of experience that the citizens, the students, anyone wants is a complete experience. They want to know, is it a problem? Is it us? And what are we going to do to solve it that is commensurate to the size of the problem, right? The problem is there's no one person who can represent that full arc credibly. And so it offers us as an enterprise a really significant challenge because people want to do the whole thing. And if I try and do the whole thing, I'm going to blow my mission credibility. I'm out of, and anybody working in the climate community is not going to go beyond their credibility. We work too hard to get it, and we're not going to blow it. So that sets up, but then you're like, well, it's a really big problem. And they say, well, what are you going to do? And you say, well, it's a really big problem. Well, that's not really going to work in this context. And so there are some structural issues on our community that make this really challenging. And I think that one of the things that NSF did when they designed the CSEP project with those three co-PIs of science, learning scientists, and practitioners together, that was really a design to get around that issue. But I think the solution piece is also somewhere in that, whether the climate scientist is the solutions piece, it might be a fourth leg of that design. But it's definitely another modality that makes those teams really need to be very effective, is to be able to do the full arc. And that's a challenge. I don't think we've all got it down yet.
But Frank and Mika, do you, another question to ask, are there plans or do you know of other examples where other cities or regions where your kind of work, looking at the community leadership or the broader community coming to grips with this, is going on?
I mean, there's examples of cities that have been pretty effective. Like, I think Seattle has a pretty good reputation for the work that they're doing. Again, the ethos there, the norms there, the idea, the whole perception of the city, their own self-concept as a city is a progressive city that addresses these issues. So, San Diego's an interesting challenge because it's so conservative.
You just have to make them aware of the climate change consequences to coffee there, right? And they can be motivated.
right, the coffee. You get a good cup of coffee. Yeah, but emphasize what's good about San Diego. That's the thing. So, yeah, there's an interesting. It hasn't been done too much, is what I'm. What we're doing right now is very different. It's pretty innovative, and as far as I know, there's no other city that has a program like this. I think CSEP was very. They gambled, threw the dice and said,
right.
Let's try it and let's see what you can do.
Because it's not your typical learners you're talking about, not school children. You're talking about elected officials.
No, and they're people who maybe will give you 10 or 15
executives.
minutes.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Frank?
But there's another piece to this, is that there are a lot of cities that are taking this on. I think city-level leadership has been instrumental in the United States and in other countries as well. But what hasn't happened, from what we can tell, is that the work that this panel is talking about, which is climate education, the fullness of what that is not being brought in to that space to engage their constituencies, to engage their future generations. The connection between those is still very missing. I think you alluded to it before, and I think one of the exciting possibilities is to focus at that level and really see where this could be done. If we can't do this in New York City or in San Francisco or in San Diego, because we have leadership here, but we're missing something big time. And we have pockets where Long Beach is being led by an aquarium, or another community that's being led by a university, or another place that's being led by K-12, or another place that's being done by community education. But the combination of these and the synergy and the interesting interaction between them, I think that is a really missed opportunity that we're on the cusp of figuring out how to do that. But that's going to require new partnerships, new funding vehicles that go beyond innovation. And how we get there, that's we're calling it out as the issue. How we get there is unclear at this point in time, but we're working on it. But you got to first understand the problem in order to be able to move forward.
Can I just add something? I remember I talked to you about the efficacy, identity, and values. I can do something, I belong, and I have the same value system. It's really interesting with climate change is that people often have the value. They want the planet to be here for the next generation. A vast majority of the people in the United States feel that they are concerned, and the weak link is this efficacy thing. They don't know what they can do. And it's kind of different. It's very different than most integration issues, most community issues. Usually you're trying to get them to connect at the value level. But for this problem, for this community, for our community, people who are concerned, that efficacy one is a really, really tough one. And if you make people feel, that's what the question's getting to, make people feel as if there's nothing they can do and they feel defeated, there's a giving up and there's a shutting down that you do because it's just too vast for you to think about. It's too threatening, and it threatens our personal security and our families. So that's the big one. That's the big one that we're working on now. And focusing on the positive and what is happening actually is very exciting, and it relieves people when they hear that good things are happening.
Great. I was struck last week with a news item to the point where I actually went to the report that it was cited. And this was based on a population projection in the local Washington Post, I think it was. about the growth of this. I forget the exactly time frame, but the growth of this area is supposed to go up to 7.5 million people. That was interesting enough, but what was really interesting about that is that in that period of time, I don't forget what it was, 20 years away or 30 years away or something of that sort, this population in the area is going to be less white, about the same percentage African American, and a lot more Spanish and Asian. And you can go to other cities all over the country. So I have two questions that touch on this. And that first one is in climate literacy surveys of communities. Are there perceptible differences in the populations and attitudes, tribal, Hispanic, white, and then also working with how do we work with the poor at-risk kids who maybe are learning English, as well as trying to learn the other subjects, who have no cell phones, they have no computer at home, those kinds of things. So we have this changing population, and how do we make sure we are actually engaging, informing those kids in those communities as part of our broader community?
To answer the first part, I gave a talk on the Latino community and climate change at AGU last year. Mm-hmm. And so we did, I told you we did a poll in San Diego, and I've actually talked to somebody else who did another poll up in, I think it's Chicago. But what we found was that the Latino community in San Diego actually had greater concern and was more involved in activities and actions that reduce and mitigate and help us to adapt to climate change than the rest of the community. And I have a theory about this, is that there's less buffers between the impacts of climate change for that community. So if you're working outside, I'm Latina, so we don't all work outside, but but there are a lot of Latinos who work outside and who don't have air conditioning, that are in poorer communities. They feel the temperature rise. They feel that the fog cover is not as high. They feel that it's not cooling at night. So they're feeling the impacts of climate change in a way that you don't feel it if you have air conditioning and you're working in an office all the time. So there is some really interesting differences in the communities in terms of awareness and willingness to do something about it. As far as children, ours was 18 and above, so I don't know about kids.
Tanya, people don't know, but you've got a growing Hispanic population in Delaware.
Actually, in the United States, minorities are larger than the white population as of this year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're no longer, that's what I'm trying to say, they're no longer minorities. The white population is now a minority. Actually, we are working with Oki Lee out of New York University, and she has helped write the frameworks and the next generation science standards on diversity. And I mentioned at the very beginning that these next generation science standards are for all students, and there are case studies on special ed students, ELL students, there's different 7 gifted students, and that these standards work for every student out there. And so we are also working with Oki coming in and working with our teachers and getting special training on different strategies to work with English as a second language. And we're hoping, many times there's pull-out programs where during science time or social studies time, students are pulled out and not getting science or social studies, and that's when they're getting English or their English as a second language class. And we're asking the teacher to push in because the science is so rich that they can be learning their English through science class or through social studies class. So we are very aware, and we're working really hard to make sure that all students are getting science in the classroom.
But I think we've seen that unfortunately we're seriously underinvested in this area. It's not just simply translation. You don't take the English language and just translate it and it works. Programs have to be differentiated. Our experience in NOAA with a program in San Diego and the Channel Islands, it's a different program to really work effectively, and the demographics are different, and the pool, if we're talking from a workforce perspective, I'm supposedly mid-career. I don't feel very mid-career. But a lot of the people that I work with are much older, and they're going to be retiring soon. workforce that replaces the enterprise that does the work that we do, both in education and the science enterprise and the expanded science enterprise, is not very diverse in the schools, and it should be reflective of the community. The jobs that we have are good jobs, but the people who are going to be taking those jobs aren't reflective of the community. And I think the communities that are going to be most vulnerable, most impacted, most exposed to a lot of the severe aspects of this are not effectively engaged. And they may be concerned, but I mean, are we focused on engaging them, giving them the tools, the resources, and the support to make the best decisions they can for their communities and their populations and their families? I think that the answer to that is we're starting, but it is not commensurate at all.
It's interesting it comes around to this. I have my other hat is that I do research on underrepresented minorities in the sciences. And I've been doing a 9-year study of a program that's national, tracking students across 9 years from undergraduate through their professional careers in sciences. And I can tell you that one of the there's a lot of hope that climate change will actually bring in will be a way to leverage interest in science for underrepresented minorities, because there's a huge value of community and health and making things safe for the next generation. And so if that value component, linking that to the science that they're learning, is much more critical for African Americans and Latinos, Hispanics, than it is for majority white and Asian. Interesting, Asian too, but that's what the research is showing. So there's a great opportunity actually here to link the climate change research to science, which is being talked about nationally. I've been at several conversations about this and how to integrate it into the science standards, and Howard Hughes Medical Institute has been involved in that. So there is an initiative to try and really actively do that to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in sciences.
Mm-hmm. Tanya, let me ask you this. This is a question. Let me give you a bit of a background. I mean, you know it, but just to set up the question. Around the country, you see this pushback on Common Core. My own home state of Louisiana, the governor, who was one of the governors that championed Common Core, is now going to court to stop in an open warfare with the superintendent of education about implementation of it. And this, to varying degrees, it's happening, even in states like Maryland, frankly. We're going to have similar problems with next generation science standards, because some of the things that are in it, evolution, climate change, and so on, are to some people controversial topics. So the questioner says that the challenge we have, and they use the example of New York, where next generation science standards are getting blasted, this person says. But the problem is not the standards themselves, or the Common Core for that matter, but is in the state's implementation of the standards that is faulty. How can we communicate within our communities to defend NGSS given the problems with state implementation?
I think it's really important to communicate, and have a strong implementation plan with all those stakeholders involved. And again, I don't get in front of PTA crowds. I don't get in front of a board. I have my teachers or students get up, because you can't, when those students talk about what they're doing in their science classes, or teachers are talking about how they're changing, you can't fight a student or a teacher. And it just, I don't know, Delaware, we have some pockets, but for the most part, we've been out there. We're making sure that we're talking to our stakeholders, we're including them on decisions, and again, communicating. And if you don't get out there, some of the pushback, we talked about this at lunchtime with West Virginia, they adopt it without talking to their community. We had town meetings before we even thought in Delaware about adopting. We held town meetings up and down the state, invited the communities in to ask questions and to share what we were going to do and what it looked like and our plan moving forward. So I don't know if we
You
were
told me
lucky
over
in
lunch
Delaware or what.
you might want to formalize it a little bit, but you told me over lunch an interesting strategy in which you had the potential naysayers have to
in
express their
95
views within groups rather than...
In 95, I was in the classroom, and I remember I'm from the southern part of Delaware, and southern part of Delaware is totally different than the north. Southern's a little more conservative. Yeah, it's Eastern Shore. And so I remember being a teacher, and the person that was in my job as a state science supervisor, they were going around talking about the standards, and it was evolution. We got escorted out by the police. And so this time around, now I'm in charge of these standards, and I was scared to death. I'm like, what am I going to do when they're talking about evolution? Nobody even talked about evolution. It was climate change. So I'm like, I can't keep my mouth shut. I'm just going to spout off, but you have to keep your mouth shut. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I called up Department of Natural Resources. There was a climate change person. Got in contact with her, and I said, all right, I know you just did some town meetings. Tell me, what's going on. How do I handle this group of people? What do I say? She gave me some tips. I went to my Secretary of Ed, told him a little bit. They told me to look at blogs because they post everything of what they're going to do when they go to meetings. So he's like, all right, we're going to group people when they come in. They're not going to sit in a posse and fire questions. Instead, I gave them different colored paper, and we divided into groups, and they had to rotate. So they had to break up. So they couldn't be in groups of 5 or 10 to ask me firing questions. So when they're in small groups, one at a time, it's easier to handle their questions than a whole big group. And it worked out. It worked out well, and they sort of faded away. And then when we presented it to the board, I think one person just got up at the state board and said we should not adopt these standards. And I want to say we had maybe 20 teachers there that said we need to adopt these standards. So again, getting those teachers and getting students involved really helped.
Great. We're close to time, but there's one question that was, see if I can put a couple of questions in. One is to what degree do your efforts focus on data that show climate change impacts? For example, in Maryland and Delaware, both of our states have in recent years conducted climate change impact assessments. So we're using that geographically specific information that helps people understand what climate change means now and into the future and where they live, not just polar bears, but where they live. That's one aspect. Frank, you're familiar with a lot of efforts that involve real data analysis.
So, I mean, one of the things that I think is common across the Common Core, the Next Generation Science Standards, and a lot of other new standard work is the ability to look at argumentation based on evidence. And so how we look at evidence and which data, I mean, we're at federal space. We have tons and tons and tons and tons of data. We have tons and tons of versions of the same data. So finding which data to do this is something we have to own part of that problem. But still, the move to argumentation, evidence, and building that in your work is a rich space. It's not just saying what the information is and expecting them just to take it blindly. Those days are gone. So absolutely the move to data, and not just data from observation, but data from models, data from theoretical studies, other forms of data, and also a lot of there's the right term for it, traditional knowledge data. So it's not just thermometer data that we're talking about here. So it's a lot of different forms of data, but I think we're in a rich space to take advantage of that. But that also means big data makes it harder in some ways, not easier. Because as a former classroom teacher, which data do I use? Please point it to me. And there's, remember, there's like 3 million of us asking the same question with a whole lot more data that's coming down. So it's going to be, how we can build coherence as we answer this question is going to be critical for people like Tanya and others, because the internet is not our friend. Google and Bing make things harder, not easier. So finding the pathways that are effective is really critical to being progressive on this.
And I'll just say for the report that we did, we really tried to get as much local information impact area that we could. So that was one of the big contributions, and one of the things that had to be done is when they had larger data sets, we had to find what was local to San Diego County and really look at the impacts of San Diego County. The thing is that if you can have local information, it has greater impact. People are more likely to listen to it if they're experiencing it and they know it's going to be them. So when you say it's going to happen to the world or it's happening in polar areas, we're losing the ice, people know that, but it doesn't touch them as much as your magnolia trees are going to start to die out. That's a whole different kind of thing. So we tried to make it as local as we could, and we worked with the Scripps Research Institute scientists in order to break down data as small as we could to our region. And we find that has a large impact and helps people to listen more. One
last question, then we have to close. And I don't want to, just if you give some examples, that'd be great if you know any. But one question is, if you look at this discussions, this conference, it's emblematic. We have government, we have educational community, we've got NGOs. What about the private sector? How do we engage, or are you engaged? Give us some examples of where we're engaged industry into coming to working with us in education to address the climate and energy challenge. Anyone? Frank, too.
I mean, one thing that I can definitely say is as we work in this, remember I said that we've spent somewhere in the order of 120. That's probably a low estimate of what we spend in this space on the climate education space. It's very clear that the diversification of funders is a critical piece. So as these projects have to go into phase 3, they're at phase 2 now, 2.5 I guess it is. The consortium of funders approach with this philanthropic, corporate, expanding the base, because the lift here is huge. But there's going to have to be more entities brought into this that are interested in making these critical human capital investments for the nation if we're going to be successful over the long haul. And that's only going to be done by non-federal, in addition to whatever we're able to do federal over the near and midterm.
Again, communication. You want them to be partners with you. So we have a communication business, private sector on next generation science standards, what you can do, and coming in and volunteer. I work for I'm on the governor's STEM council, so we're trying to get businesses and private sector to come in and volunteer in schools. Some of you have expertise that the teachers don't have. So you can come in and work with high school students on a project, on a climate change project, and moving them forward. So we're always trying to find new ways to get the business and the private sector into classrooms.
Go ahead.
We've been engaging with the businesses quite a bit, and like I said, the lunch and learns have been pretty effective. I think the neat thing is that there are some businesses that are really doing some amazing stuff, and we need to celebrate that and lift it up and so people can see it. So that's been our approach, is to identify who is doing what, and then how do we inform their employees about what they're doing, and how do we inform the city about what they're doing. So for a lot of initiatives like conserving water and reducing electricity use, it's good for their company to do it, because they save money by doing it. So putting solar panels on actually saves them money in the long run, and it's good for the environment. It's good for reducing CO2 emissions. So if you can couple those two things together, they're motivated by the cost savings, but also, lo and behold, you're also helping things out in the larger realm of things. We can celebrate that and capitalize on it, and that's part of our education, is to tell our city about what we're doing. So businesses are definitely involved in that.
I'll just add one more component to that, and that is on the education side. I think universities are increasingly collaborating much more early on in a student's career in terms of internships and work experience for our students, so that the kinds of knowledge and skills that they're gaining throughout their education become relevant as they enter the workforce. And I don't mean that in a narrow kind of vocational way. I think that one of the things we know is that businesses want well-educated, good communicators, good team builders, people of high integrity. There are things other than just narrow technical skill that employers are looking for, and so we're looking to have much richer conversations with employers and the industry around the green energy is a growing industry, and there are a lot of opportunities there for our students, and we're partnering with them so that our students will be well prepared for those careers.
Well, great. Well, first and foremost, let's thank the panelists, Nancy, Mika, Frank, and Tanya. Excellent responses and perspectives. I also want to thank the audience for showing up, for paying attention. I've been looking. But also for the excellent questions that actually made me look good because I was asking smart questions. They're your questions. Thanks very much, and keep up the good work on climate change education. We really appreciate it. We want you to have a chance to go and take a break, refreshment, and then come back for the last session in the afternoon. Thanks again very much.
I have reports here if anybody wants.